All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Clarissa Hayes, and I will be moderating today's webinar on behalf of FRAC. As a reminder, this webinar is part of our deep dive series and is only scheduled to last 30 minutes. We may end up going a couple minutes over, but we will be recording today's event, and we'll make sure that everybody gets that recording in the event that you have to log off early. So we are very excited about today's conversation because while we know school has started across the country, many districts are finding that they are having to quickly change their learning model and by extension their meal service because of disruptions caused by COVID-19. Today's webinar will focus on ways to adapt and adjust operations in the event of quarantines and school closures due to the pandemic, and we have two school districts who have experienced this and will be sharing their insight today on the webinar. So we definitely know that this is an ongoing conversation that can't be covered in 30 minutes, but we wanted to give this opportunity to ask questions and hear from two peers, and we will continue to provide guidance and resources on this as we move forward. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I wanted to just start with a quick overview of what we'll be chatting about today and who we have joining us. So like I mentioned, my name is Clarissa and I work at FRAC, and I'm going to be giving a very quick waiver refresher before turning it over to our speakers. And those speakers include Kim Meeks, who is the Director of Student Nutrition at the Roswell Independent School District in New Mexico. And then last, we'll hear from a team at Charleston County School District. So we have Walter Campbell, who is the Executive Director, and Angela McLaughlin, who is the Director of Nutrition Services Department at that school district. And we are planning to save time at the end for questions. So if you have any questions for our speakers as we go along, you should see at the top of your screen a Q&A feature. So if you click on that, you can go ahead and add any questions you have. We will be using this instead of the chat function, so make sure that you do include those in that Q&A box. All right. So like I mentioned, I did want to just start with setting the scene for the flexibilities that we have this school year. Obviously, many of you are probably already utilizing these, but wanted to just go over these very quickly. So the biggest change that we've seen this school year is that schools can choose to operate the seamless summer option in place of the school breakfast program and the national school lunch program. And as we all know, the summer food service program is no longer an option. That was available last year and since March 2020, but as of this school year, the seamless summer option is what schools have to utilize if they're not planning to use school breakfast or NSLP. So meals served through SSO during the 21-22 school year have to follow the school breakfast and lunch nutrition standards, and they are reimbursed at that higher summer food service program reimbursement rate. So using SSO allows schools to serve all children breakfast and lunches at no charge, which reduces the admin burden on school nutrition departments. And then in addition to that rather big piece, many of the waivers that have been available around meal service remain an option for the duration that they're needed. So that includes non-congregate, the meal service time flexibility, parent pickup, and many of those waivers that were used for home delivery, grab and go, curbside pickup as needed. So this is really important, as we know, as many schools may be forced to revert back to a hybrid or remote instruction model. There also is some flexibility around the meal pattern, but it is a bit more targeted and limited compared to the previous waiver that we had. So schools can request and then receive approval to implement those flexibilities on a case-by-case basis. And then if you are someone who's operating the after-school meal program, there are still waivers that are available around serving after-school suppers and snacks. So schools and community programs can apply for and serve free meals regardless of the location during the school year. And then like I mentioned, for school meals, there's still some flexibility around non-congregate, parent pickup, and meal service times. I do want to flag that these waivers are for the duration and extent needed. So before you make any changes to your programs, always make sure to check in with your child nutrition state agency. All right, so what does this mean for meal options by operator and by program type? So if you are a school, things look pretty similar. You can serve up to a breakfast, lunch, and then that supper and snack, and you have a couple different options. So for breakfast and lunch, you can choose to use school breakfast program and NSLP, or you can run that through seamless summer option. And then for that supper and snack, you can choose to do the snack through NSLP or a supper and snack through CACFP. And then for community sponsors and programs, they're still able to serve that supper and snack after school. You can do a snack through NSLP if you're operating underneath a school sponsor, and then you can do a supper and snack through CACFP at risk. So wanted to just give that quick refresher before we go ahead and get started. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Kim Meeks, who again is the Director of Student Nutrition at the Roswell Independent School District, and she was able to join us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her to share about what has been happening in their school district since school started. So Kim, the floor is yours.
Kim Meeks, and I am the Director of Student Nutrition at Roswell School District, and that's in Roswell, New Mexico. And I oversee 22 schools, and out of those 22 schools, I have 2 central kitchens and then 5 regular kitchens. The 2 central kitchens are the ones that produce the food that go out to all the other schools. Which is a challenge when you have a school that is quarantined, because you still have to produce the food for what's going on inside the school. So you're doing double duty. And we have 9,700 students this year, and normally we have about 10,000 students. So we've lost a few hundred students. Normally we do offer versus served in middle school and high school, and then serve only in our elementaries. That is what works best with us sending the food to the elementary schools. We were doing, just a normal school year, and then COVID hit, and we had to immediately turn to grab and go. And we were doing grab and go at each of our elementary schools. Our staff were out front giving out breakfast and lunch. We put them together, and then the parents or student could come and pick up their meals that way. When this year's school started, we started on August 4th. We were early at starting this school year. So we were planning on a normal year, but the COVID numbers were rising. And so on August 3rd, I found out that I was not going to be able to do my salad bars like I had planned. And so we had to go to the next idea that came up. So we put a lot of the salad bar items on the trays that were going to the students. And then in the high school, I went ahead and still had the complete salad bar, but I had to have a staff member ask the student which items they wanted and put it on their tray that way. And it's been really difficult because, as all of y'all are short-staffed, I'm sure. I'm not the only one. And so it makes it real difficult when you don't have your full, complete staff to try to serve the items that way. We have had schools that have been shut down and quarantined. At those schools, when that happens, I try to keep sandwich food in our freezers and refrigerators, because I know it's going to happen. So we immediately pull those items and start making grab and go bags. And then we do put the breakfast and lunch together in one bag, and we offer it at that school, out front of that school, so the parents or student can just pick them up. At the other schools, we continue to do our regular service as usual. And so that's what we've been doing. I have to change my menu constantly because I'm sure everybody here has the same problem of getting food in, and you have to just be ready to accept whatever they have for you on the truck. And so I continually change my menu. So that's my plan to continue the rest of the year, is just to adapt and be flexible with what we're doing. If they didn't have the waivers, I could not do this, because there's no way you can produce a reimbursable meal without the waivers. And I did have to fill in some opt-in forms because some days we weren't getting chocolate milk. We would just get the non-flavored milk. And so that's all I could send out. And so that's what I've done. But that's how I run everything. So, you know, it's a challenging year.
Great, thank you, Kim. And I know you mentioned, you know, staffing challenges, which we're definitely hearing about across the country. So I did put a question in the chat box for everyone listening in. If you're facing the same thing in your district and you've been able to change your, you know, meal service operations around a little bit to account for that, feel free to share that in the chat box, and we'll highlight some of those at the end of the webinar. But with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to our next pair of speakers. So we have, again, Walter Campbell and Angela McLaughlin from the Charleston County School District, who are going to share a little bit about what's happening in their district. So I will turn it over to you two.
Thank you. So I just wanted to start out giving everyone an overview of the size and makeup of Charleston County School District. We're the second largest district in the state of South Carolina. We have a blend of schools, urban, suburban, and rural. It's over 1,300 square miles spanning the coastline. We serve over 49,000 students in 88 schools and programs that we have. So, next slide, please. Thank you. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about is our packaging and our service model. During COVID, we really focused on a grab and go model. It's been very successful. And it really helps us with speed of service, and we can produce more with less staff. And as Kim mentioned, staffing is definitely an issue. So we've started this. Walter will speak a little bit more on the financial aspect of our containers, but we have found that they're well worth the additional cost. It keeps the product colder, it keeps the product hotter, and the quality is there. We don't serve and make our meals on the serving line any longer. We are preparing and have the meals ready. So what we will do is we still batch cook, and we will prep from the line. And for example, the picture on the right, which is a quesadilla, we'll prep that, we'll close it with the lid, and then we'll put it in our warming cabinet. And as the students come through the serving line to take it back to their classroom to eat, we'll have those items ready to go, passing out for them. So it really speeds up the service model. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is reaching students who are quarantining. And there are two different service models that we've found to be successful. If we have an entire school go to a temporary virtual learning situation, we'll offer curbside pickup. Our cafeteria managers, our nutrition services managers will work with the individual school administration to set up the best serving time. So we'll have a serving window, say, of 11 to 11:30. And then we will offer our hot lunch of the day and breakfast during a curbside pickup time. If we have, let's say, one 5th grade class that is quarantining, we will also offer our grab and go hot meal of the day available for pickup. And that's handled in a school by school basis, with the parent reaching out and working with school administration and our managers to set up pickup. So we have found that the best course is to work with school administration as a vital partner in order to be successful. And they'll do call outs, they'll do emails, and they'll do registrations for meals if needed. Next slide, please. staffing during quarantining, the biggest recommendation that we can make, and we have found to be successful, is being flexible. Moving team members to assist at other schools has been tremendously successful for us. In the last example, if we have a school that we know has gone into a virtual learning situation for a 2-week period, we're able to relocate those team members, other than the manager potentially and one other team member, to help with curbside. And we're able to relocate those other team members at different schools. The key is flexibility. We have created carpools in our district where team members will report to our operations campus and then ride to a school together. We will also pay mileage if necessary, if we are asking someone to go outside of their normal geographic region. And of course, in order to do all this, we have to follow all of our COVID safety protocols, like practicing social distancing. We have an activity bus that can fit 15 people. We may only put 5 people on the bus so that we're able to socially distance. Wear face masks, wash hands frequently, and of course, being fully vaccinated makes a huge difference. So I'm going to pass it over to Walter now for some more information.
There we go. Angela, can you hear me okay? Because my screen was jumping. All right.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, awesome. Thanks. All right, I appreciate this time, and for everybody out there, congratulations, you're school meal superheroes. How we adapted to, I guess, this crisis management, or what we call here in Charleston, crisis leadership. If I had to give you 2 takeaways from today, or the deep dive, would remember these 2 things, and this is what we do. It has nothing to do with packaging, but you need to stand up and be in your schools. You need to be in your schools every day, and that's what we do. Not just drive by and you're in there 5 minutes, how things are going, but we're in the schools 2 and 3 hours a day working with our staff, and it builds camaraderie, and it really pumps up the morale. And the second thing is, I know we have to balance between the financial part of our business, and we do, you have to have processes, and you have to balance between serving our children quality meals. But remember this, right now, the bottom line is important, but it's second to our employees. So I have to give you another tidbit. The second thing is make sure your employees feel secure and cared about. And that's what we've really tried to do. Now, on the financial end of it, that we talk about a little bit, you still have to have those processes, still have to meet that bottom line. We started way before the pandemic looking at how we can streamline things, because we knew that we were going to have issues with staffing even before the pandemic. So we went out and we researched different packaging, and that's how the packaging you see earlier in the video is the packaging that we use. But if we're going to use that packaging, which is expensive, and I'll talk about that in a second, then we would need to reduce labor. And to give you an idea, our frontline team, so our operators are out in the field, our operators start at $16.84 an hour. Once you add on retirement and fringe benefits and indirect costs, that frontline employee is costing us $26 an hour instead of $16.84. And then our managers start $24 an hour, which is pretty good for our area and our market. And we're actually able to attract people. But what happens is a lot of folks, when they go to a different model, it's going to streamline things like using the packaging. They can put in a warming box. They forget that that costs money and they need to reduce labor. So we need to figure out how we can reduce labor with this model, whether it's virtual or in school. We're still going to be using this model. The packaging you saw this year, at the beginning of the school year, increased by 50% because the raw materials that they were trying to get to make this packaging increased by 50%, and they passed it on to us. But the benefit to our kids of using this packaging is it's quality. It keeps the meals hot. We can put the meals in a warming box, and we're still batch cooking. But by using a tally sheet, which we can use, we are moving at least one student per second through the serving line. Maybe one student every 2 seconds, because our elementary school students, they grab a bag and they put their meal in it and they take it back to their classroom. But in the high schools, we're definitely doing 1 to 2 students per second going through the line, because we don't give them a bag. They know how to carry everything, whether they're going back to their classroom or not. Plus, we have multiple lines. So we're able to move students through quite quickly. Initially, going back to the financial part of this, we were always focused on 18 meals per labor hour. But to pay for the packaging, we would need to move to 21 meals per labor hour or plus. And so this is to give you an idea of how we worked it out. We'll take a normal school. So let's say a school does 225 breakfasts and 450 lunches, okay? At 18 meals per labor hour, you're gonna get 33 hours worth of labor to spend. So that's a manager at 8 hours. And then our full-time employees are 6 hours a day, and they get full-time benefits, whole 9 yards. So that means you're gonna have 4 6-hour employees plus your manager, so about 32 hours. So now you're gonna go, well, that's at 18 meals per labor hour. What do we do when you get to 21 plus meals per labor hour? So now you're at 20.5 hours if you want to be at 21 meals per labor hour, based on still 225 breakfasts and 450 lunches in this scenario. So now you're down to an 8-hour manager. We lose 1 employee. We're down to 3 6-hour staff, and it's 26 hours. You're actually tracking 23 meals per labor hour, and it makes it financially sound to use the packaging that we're using, okay? But Walter, you go, what if somebody calls out? This is so seamless that if somebody calls out, we'll ask one of our employees, hey, can you, instead of working 6 hours a day, can you work 7? So if those 2 employees that you're down to, plus your manager, work 7 hours, plus your manager works 8, you're still running 27 meals per labor hour. It's amazing how fast it works. So now you go, okay, well, how much is that extra packaging, okay? The packaging, we'll just use a scenario again, 225 breakfasts, 450 lunches. The packaging for 1 day with this 50% increase is $180 a day. That's expensive. But remember, if I have a frontline employee that's cost me $16.84, they're actually costing me, after everything, $26. So if I take that $180 it's costing me in packaging and divide it by the $26, that's 7 hours. Now, here's the thing. That packaging is going to come back down in price eventually, but that labor will never come back down in price. So what we've done that a lot of folks won't do if they implement these things, if I give you a tip, if you implement things to make things streamlined, you have to reduce your labor. And as you know, as we were talking about earlier, Kim was saying that labor is an issue. But I've got schools right now, or we have schools, they're doing 30 meals per labor hour. Now, I'm still going to remember, I said in the beginning, your team comes first. Remember your team. But the process is great. Students are in line, shorter period of time, because if they come to the line, you know they're not going to stay 6 feet apart or 3 feet or whatever the rule is. So by using this, the students are zipping through the line, going back to the classroom, and they have a longer time to enjoy their meal. And I don't know if I have any more time, but look, we're not the only district around that comes up with different ideas. I know all y'all do. If I could mention a couple of, well, at least one district, Pickens County, they use an aluminum pan with a cardboard insert for their meals, and it works well, whether you're doing virtual or not. So whether we're doing virtual or not, we're gonna keep this packaging. All the way down the road and keep this packaging. Some districts are using the small paper takeout containers like you'd find in some of the Asian takeout restaurants, and those work well and maybe less expensive. Okay, but those are just some quick ideas, some takeaways. Again, the big takeaway is your employees are the most important thing.
Great. Thank you so much, Walter. And I think just from your comments and Kim's and Angela's, I feel like we could dedicate a lot of time to staffing. And then we're also seeing things in the chat too about packaging and how hard that's been with supply chain issues. So definitely something that we'll keep in mind. And I did see a question from someone who looks to have a smaller school district. So we can definitely follow up with you on that and share some examples from smaller school districts. So I do want to get to a couple questions, realize that we're at almost the end of our 30 minutes together, but if folks want to hang on and listen in, feel free. Otherwise, we will make sure that everybody gets the recording But I did notice that there are, outside of the staffing questions, which we'll definitely do some follow-up on, there are questions about making or, identifying kids who are coming to get the grab and go meal. So one is from someone who's asking about closed seamless summer sites and how are you making sure that all meals served during a closure are going to district students? And I don't think, Kim and the Charleston team, you referenced whether you were doing closed sites or if they're open sites, but I was wondering if you could maybe address this question. How are you getting, if you're a closed seamless summer site, how are you tracking that information?
I'm a open site, but
Okay.
if I were a closed site, you would have to have the student's name there and have to have them identify it to mark it off, or you could take your POS out there and have them type in their number.
Mm-hmm.
And we do pretty much the same thing that Kim does, but we actually have, so kind of get a count. We actually have a online registration where our parents can register. But if they show up and they haven't registered, then we just get the name of the student and do the same thing Kim was saying and check it off. Because we'll have some students that their parents live right next door to a school that they don't go to. So if they want to go to that school, we let them.
Great. Yeah. And I know from talking to other school districts, the registration and having that check at the pickup site seems to be the main avenues for doing that. And then there was a question too around if a district is quarantining small groups of students at a time, groups of 5 students or 1 class, how are they providing meals to those students? So I think Walter and Angela, you've referenced this, that sometimes you have like maybe a school grade or one school that's quarantining. Can you just talk a little bit more about your method for that? So do you have to like share more information with parents? Is there anything that you change as far as your meal service goes for smaller groups of quarantine students?
We don't change the menu. What we're able to do is, because we already provide our meals in the grab and go method, if a parent or a guardian of a student that is quarantining in a class, then we would ask the manager to set up a time with that parent, and they would have meals available for the parents to pick up from the front office. And we would get the student's name and their information and then account for it that way. That's been very successful. Relatively speaking, it's a low number. So if you have, a football team or 1 grade or 1 class out at a school, the participation numbers are lower who want to come and pick up the item, but we do serve the hot lunch of the day.
Yeah, and that someone in the chat just mentioned, in my district, we have parents register their children. Since summer, we fed all children 18 and under. This made the transition difficult because the siblings in homeschooled or private schooled children. So that's definitely a challenge that we're hearing in other places as well. And we're really seeing this as the start of a conversation around this. So definitely more examples are out there, like Walter mentioned. There's some really great and innovative things going on around staffing, and I keep seeing things pop up around just access to packaging, and we'll definitely follow up with some examples on that as well. But again, I want to be mindful. We wanted to keep this to kind of a deep dive and have quick expertise and insight from 2 school districts. So I'm going to go ahead and start to wrap us up, but we definitely want to keep this conversation going. So feel free, if you want to share any insight after the webinar, to email me, and I'll make sure that it goes out with the webinar recording. But I did want to just quickly highlight a new resource that we have that was released last month, and it just talks about different things to think about as we launch this new school year around CEP, school meal applications, supporting PEBT if your district is involved in that, and just an overview of the waivers. So that is on our website. And then we do have more webinars coming up this month, some on data and research. We have one on the 23rd around state legislation, if that's something you're interested in. And then we're also going to be talking about the American Rescue Plan and how that allocated funding for after-school programs at the end of the month. So as always, FRAC is definitely here as a resource outside of these webinars. So if you have any questions or concerns or want to connect with us or any of our speakers today, feel free to reach out to me. My information is on this slide here, chayes@frac.org. Feel free to shoot me an email. and we'll go ahead and wrap up. I just wanted to thank our speakers today. So thank you, Kim, Walter, and Angela for joining us and for sharing that great information. We'll make sure everybody gets the recording, and thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.